The breaking news this morning: in just a few hours, President Trump will welcome Ukrainian President Zelensky and several top European leaders to the White House. The purpose: try to find a path to ending Russia's war in Ukraine. And it comes just days after, as we all watch, the president met with the other key party in all of this, Russian President Vladimir Putin. And that red carpet treatment was quite the contrast to the tense reception that Zelensky received at the White House the last time he was there back in February. For Zelensky, today's Oval Office visit is a chance for a do-over, a redo, a reset, if you will. But he may not like the terms that are being laid out before him as he's about to walk in. Overnight, President Trump wrote on social media that Zelensky could end the war almost immediately, which Putin started, by giving up Ukraine's claim to Crimea and its hopes of joining NATO. And this is the message from Russia overnight. Moscow launching a new series of attacks, a new series of strikes that hit a residential building, killing at least 7 people, including a toddler. President Zelensky posted that this kind of attack is exactly why Ukraine needs security guarantees as part of any deal in order to make sure Putin actually will stop and not relaunch a new war just after. CNN's Elena Treen standing by at the White House, where it really is about to get underway, all of this in this series of meetings that will be happening. What's the very latest you're hearing from there?
Well, look, this is going to be very crucial, Kate, to how this moves forward. And I think one key that is very much clear from the United States side is that the president wants to try to end this war as quickly and swiftly as possible. That's why we've seen him move at great speed to try and organize these types of meetings. However, what's unclear is whether or not Zelensky, but also the 7 European leaders who are going to be joining him today to meet with President Trump are willing to make the same type of concessions that President Donald Trump is. One of that is, of course, the message we saw the president lay out last night. He essentially said in order to end the war, Ukraine must be willing to give up Crimea, a territory that Russia, I'd remind you, illegally annexed in 2014, and also agree not to become a member of NATO. Those are among the conditions we know that Vladimir Putin laid out on Friday that he believes are necessary in order to reach a peace deal. But there is also a bright spot for Ukraine. We did hear yesterday from Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. He was on CNN saying that Russia is willing to accept security guarantees. And we have heard from our reporting, particularly on from some European leaders, that the U.S. is far more open to being the ones to provide those security guarantees than they had been in the past. One thing as well that I think, of course, is worth noting is that we are now hearing the president say that he is not going to be pushing for a ceasefire. This is very different than the rhetoric we had heard in the past, particularly, you know, the president, I remind you how we got here. The president had given Vladimir Putin a deadline of August 8th to either agree to a ceasefire or face severe economic pain and sanctions. That is now changing. Friday as well, we heard the president, when he was heading to Anchorage, Alaska, say that he would be very unhappy if they did not reach a ceasefire. But then just one day later, he said, actually, a mere ceasefire is not what we're looking for. We're going to go straight ahead and try to push for a broader peace deal. Of course, something that has potentially left some people in Europe and in Ukraine a little nervous, because that does give Russia, of course, more time to continue the fighting that we saw them really aggressively ramp up last night. All to say, this is going to be a very, very important meeting as to see whether or not the talks can progress in the way that the Trump administration wants them to. We know a key goal for them is to try and set up a second meeting, this time having it be a trilateral meeting between President Donald Trump, President Vladimir Putin, and President Zelensky. And so we'll see if that's actually something that is achievable today. But again, we're hearing, you know, we did hear from the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, kind of lower expectations, saying they're not on the precipice of a deal. This is all about making progress. So we'll see what kind of progress actually can be made once these leaders arrive.
And joining us now for more on this is CNN Global Affairs commentator Sabrina Singh. And Sabrina, just on the fundamental first basic issue of a ceasefire now or it doesn't matter now, the dramatic swings in position that we saw and heard from President Trump going into his meeting with Putin, saying a ceasefire was needed in order to get to a peace deal, leaving the meeting saying that's no longer necessary at all. If he now comes out of the meeting today doing, I don't know, a 180 or even something slightly short of that yet again, I mean, what does that mean for Donald Trump and the United States being the peace broker here?
Well, you've continued to see the president flip-flop on his positions. I mean, he went into the summit on Friday with two objectives: to achieve a ceasefire, and if that didn't happen, there would be severe consequences put on Russia. And both of those objectives really fell apart. So I think today's meeting, if it's now, we need a ceasefire back on the table, we're accustomed to seeing President Trump flip his positions. I think what's dangerous here is the United States losing its credibility on the world stage to be able to really broker peace deals and to be taken seriously. At the end of the day, what makes the United States a great and powerful nation is our steadiness and our being able to lead nations all around the world. And so that's why the president's words really matter. And when you hear that flip-flopping of positions, it makes European leaders, the Ukrainians, and others around the world very skeptical about each time they have a conversation with the president.
And as we know from our Elena Trine was just talking about, a main goal today is to get to a place of having a trilateral meeting next. I mean, from just a communications perspective, if they leave this meeting and President Zelensky is not on board with, a trilateral meeting, and Putin's not on board with a trilateral meeting. I mean, what does Donald Trump do next? If the trilateral meeting is like the prize that he's trying to achieve, short of actually ending the war, I mean, what are the chances you think they actually get there today?
I think it's going to be really hard and very difficult. I mean, a trilateral meeting, while I understand that is the White House's objective, and ultimately this war will end at the negotiating table in a diplomatic fashion, the reality is that both sides are so far apart on what peace looks like. And we don't have a ceasefire in place. And so you're continuing to see these Russian aerial attacks hitting cities overnight, right before the summit took place on Friday. And so if there's not a trilateral agreement or a meeting set, I don't think that means talks were a complete failure. I think it's a good thing that this administration is engaging with the Russians, is engaging with the Ukrainians. But at the end of the day, putting posts out on Truth Social, basically blaming again Ukraine for the start of the war, it's just not helpful. And saying that Ukraine is ultimately the one that could end this war, that really flies in the face of the aggressor, the invading country, invading its sovereign neighbor and sovereign territory, who's just trying to fight for survival at this point. So while I hope there's a trilateral meeting at some point, I don't know that we will get there.
Yeah, and saying, Ukraine can end this war almost immediately, it is not something it's hard to find President Trump ever saying that about Russia, which obviously is the aggressor and could easily end this war immediately. On, as you were saying, the messaging going out on social media, the president did just send out another short message on social media saying this: A big day at the White House. We've never had so many European leaders here at one time. A great honor for America. Let's see what the results will be. It kind of speaks to, there's also this element of the show and of the stagecraft that is going to be on display at the White House today around all of this.
I think that's exactly right. There's a lot of show, and you'll remember right before that Alaska summit on Friday, the president also tweeted or posted on Truth Social, high stakes. This is a high stakes game, but what makes diplomacy is very difficult, and it takes steady leadership. And so while there are high stakes with this meeting and the one, of course, that came out of Friday, at the end of the day, what we really want to see here is the president putting pressure on Vladimir Putin to come to the negotiating table for a ceasefire. That's what needs to happen. And so I hope the president hears President Zelensky, other European leaders, and their plea to the president that the pressure really needs to be put on Russia and not Ukraine.
Yeah, Sabrina, it's great to see you. Thank you so much.